The room I just want to put it in perspective for just a little bit. The room that you're standing in, when we decided, the group of us, that 2 or 3 small rooms within Eureka Hall wouldn't do these legends justice. So Dennis says, D, think bigger. Why don't we think bigger? And we did. And we came up with the idea to take a classroom that I would envision that each one of our legends taught in at some point in their careers at Blue Ridge Assembly. The issue was, when we walked into it, it was pretty crappy. Now, it wasn't too bad, but it's a 100-year-old building. So if you think of a 100-year-old building with stucco walls, with cracks everywhere, large cracks, little cracks, spiderweb cracks, they were everywhere. So in talking with Melissa and Suzette and Brent, who's a miracle worker in charge of the grounds and the facilities, we met in here and said, what can we do to pretty this up? Because we're not going to dedicate a room the way it is. And Brent, over the winter, came in and patched every crack. And the team at Blue Ridge Assembly did. They didn't offload it. They came in, a lot of time went into patching the cracks. So don't look too hard, you might see a couple, but we got most of them. Then Dennis put a working party together, and we came up from a Thursday to a Sunday. And it was Dennis, his neighbor Eric, who's been up 3 or 4 times doing work for Blue Ridge Assembly. Tom was here, Lisa, myself, and Peter, and the puppy. And we went to painting the room, we went to staining. The work that Blue Ridge did, we just enhanced it to the room that you see today, which is the best looking room in the building, by the way. And when you leave, please open the doors to the other rooms just to have an idea of what it might have looked like before. Perspective is always good. So I want to thank everybody, both the Blue Ridge Assembly and our work crew, for putting this together, as well as Suzette and her team for doing the graphics. Last thing, you'll see the graphics here. There is not another room within Blue Ridge Assembly that has these graphics. None. Typically, at Blue Ridge, when you dedicate a room, and there's nothing wrong with it, it was just we wanted more for our legends. Typically, if you're at Blue Ridge Center, you'll see a very small plaque this big on the side of the room. This room is dedicated to Joe Smith. And we love Joe Smith because he dedicated the room. We wanted more. We wanted more for our legends. And really, we delivered for everybody, but mostly for our legends. So, the way the afternoon is going to work, if you'll be with me, we'll bring Cliff up, and he's going to read the inscription that's on the bottom of George and Marlea's, and then he's going to tell a story. And then he's going to turn it over to Dennis, and then to myself, and then we're going to have an open mic night. We're going to pass this mic around. And we're going to tell stories and remembrances of our legends. Every one of them. We did this at George's celebration of life, and it was so meaningful that we wanted to do it here. So start thinking of those stories. I'm sure that they're at the top of your mind.
From 1965 to 1997, George and Marlea Frentzos dedicated themselves to serving the YMCA of Greater New Orleans and their community. George worked as the assistant physical director of the Lee Circle YMCA, the physical director of the Metairie Y, the executive director of the West Bank and Lee Circle Ys. George was most proud of his work in Metairie, founding the Leaders Club and inspiring young people to develop the skills and discipline necessary to be successful in their future careers. George's wife Marlea was an avid supporter of his efforts and volunteered at various gymnastics and weightlifting tournaments, fundraisers, and student events. She also taught adult fitness classes and movement education courses to preschoolers throughout the metro region. Now, I taught for 36 years in Jefferson Parish schools. I struggled with telling this story because it seems like I'm being self-serving. But one year I won Teacher of the Year, first itinerant PE teacher in Jefferson Parish to win that award. But I don't tell the story because of me, I tell the story because everything they noticed, everything that stood out to the people that made that decision was what I learned here from this man, from the other two legends, from other people in this room, everything. So everything I did for 36 years, I brought this place and every why, this place with me along the way, and it seemed to impress a lot of people. So thank you, George, Phil, Boots. Another thing, at George's thing, made the mistake of following Boots in storytelling. Never go after Boots. Thank you very much.
For over 50 years, Mr. Phil and Miss Gail, as they are affectionately known, served selflessly at Leader School. I'm shrinking.
Some of the men are shrinking in the room.
They served selflessly at Leader School, and those who wore the New Orleans Lee Circle YMCA mantle were highly trained in leadership skills and steeped in tradition of high performance. Mr. Phil was deeply involved in the overall program leadership and direction of the school. Ms. Gail served by teaching classes and assisting the school nurse. Both sons, Phil and Eddie, were leaders and spent several adult years on school staff. As a family, they shared their lives with those who were involved in the Leaders Club program. The immeasurable impact the Wortman family has had on so many lives is an inspiring reflection of their servant leadership. Instead of a specific story, I'll tell a little bit about life at Lee Circle Y. I had the fortunate timing to be around and know just about everybody from the first women to ever step foot in the YMCA to the last leader when the Lee Circle YMCA closed. The story goes, there's one member in our room, Jerry Wang, who used to ride his bike from home to the Lee Circle Y with a chain in his hand because he would get jumped by the neighborhood gangs before he came to the Y. Much to his surprise, he was also disciplined quite strictly at the Y by Mr. Phil and Miss Gail. The timing of their relationship and what they did with us and what they could do to us was perfect. This was the time when if you went home and you said, Mr. Phil hit me, my parents would say, do I need to hit you some more? We were mixed in with every possible race, economic income. We competed together, we traveled, we did it all. Over and under. Anyway, it was, nobody thought about it. He took us throughout the whole country competing on his own time. We were just all family, and it took me a long time to realize what he did with that. So, for those stories, I'll tell one more quick story because Jerry and Ed Munster, who's the retired CEO of the Atlanta YMCA's, were both kicked out of our Y because they did not do so well in their studies. And he made them leave and quit working for the Y, and then once they re-enrolled, and the rest is history. So, thank you for being you, Mr. Phil. We appreciate it. Thanks for being tough on us. I think the people here are a good reflection that your method worked at that time. Thank you.
For more than 50 years, Boots and Erna Hoffman made a huge impact in the YMCA of Greater New Orleans. From becoming the youth director to the executive director of the West Bank Y, Boots' impact is felt wide and deep. The more than 30 years Boots served at Leader School were some of the most important years in his life. Being able to share that experience with his wife Erna made it even more valuable. Erna served as a school nurse for years. I truly believe that the values we shared at the YMCA and Leader School have been a guide for our life to this day. Boots and Erna are true legends of New Orleans. Some of you might have heard this story. I was 13 years old, and I was mowing the grass at the YMCA. There should have been child labor laws back then, but there weren't. And Boots and Rob Furman, the assistant director, had been mowing the grass. Well, I now know why there are flaps on the back of lawnmowers. There weren't back then. While I was mowing the lawn, a piece of metal came out of the back of the lawnmower and punctured my femoral artery. When I looked down, pardon me ladies, guys, you'll think this is cool. I had blood from my knees to my chest. I was in shock, and I walked into the YMCA, Boots' office at the Y. You walk in the front door, and it's to the right. And I said, Boots, I think I've been shot. Because we weren't in the best neighborhood on the West Bank. And he said a lot of, oh my gods, and oh crap. And he said, they unbuckled my pants and took a look and said, we're going to your doctor. Got to the doctor, and they were carrying me in through the lobby, Boots on one side and Rob on the other, through the lobby of the doctor's office. 2 women fainted. And we got into Dr. Winger's office, and he said, you cannot wait for an ambulance. You have to take him to West Jeff Hospital right away. The entire ride there into West Jeff, Boots was in the back cracking jokes. You're never going to have children. I think you get your pee-pee. Which it did. 4 stitches. And I got to the hospital, and the man never left my side. Ever. So we've had people that have impacted our lives, which Boots has. But he saved my life. I shouldn't be alive today telling this silly story and the remembrance of Boots. If it wasn't for Boots, I could have bled out. Don't know why I didn't bleed out. But he has been an amazing man for my entire life. And Miss Erna adopted me from that next day. So what I'd like to do is, if you'd like the mic, hold up your hand, and I'm going to hand you the mic, and then when you're done, we're going to pass the mic around, and we're going to share stories just like we just gave you. Hopefully some a little bit more fun than mine. Who's up?
So I'll offer the first story, and this is in remembrance of Marlea, Erna, and Gail, as well as Miss Pat. And so coming up to the mountain each year, it was phenomenally obvious to me the spiritual timber of the mountain. And it was maintained by those ladies. You know, when you talk about spirituality, you talk about people and their impact on others. Putting Christ forward in actions, not just words. You did it. You did it. Pat and Erna did it. And those who had any sense recognize that. And, you know, for those of us who were fortunate enough as guys to marry strong women, bully for us, right? Because we knew who ruled those relationships. Right? Yes. It was obvious. And it was a measure of success. It wasn't just who's ruling the relationships, but those were models of relationships. Those were the relationships that we wanted in our own lives, to have strong partners, to have strong partners in faith, and to be bold about that faith. And that's my remembrance. And just shout out, I know we said a lot about George, we said a lot about Bruce, we said a lot about Phil. They didn't function in a vacuum. guy's name, Adam. And the support and love and leadership that those women showed, in addition to that, Miss Pat, made an enormous impact on my life, and I think that's the story I would share.
Peter and I married sisters, so I do love it. I was a junior leader from 72 to 75-ish. George was my first ever boss, and to be honest, no one has measured up since. Dwight and George taught me a lot about work ethic, dedication to a cause, the importance of physical fitness. Really doesn't show now, but simple. Dwight also introduced me to my wife. So I can tell you George is responsible for 2 kids and 4 grandchildren. But George was so special in that he really cared for all the kids that worked for him. And if you talk to any former Medway junior leader, you will hear a love for George, a passion for what he did at the Y. And I'd like to thank the Frentzos family for loaning George to us for those many years. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Wang, and I know that's 7,448 stories I could tell. And there's some that probably I really shouldn't tell. I'm going to just share one quick thing about Phil, and it has to do with his direction. His direction in life was like a compass for all of us kids. His direction for his family was unmistakable, it was incredible. But his direction of a car going somewhere was absolutely horrendous. So I'll tell you one quick story, and it includes George Frentzos. So we used to come up to Blue Ridge by car, 13 people. And this one short story is that George Frentzos was driving a 1955 Cadillac. Phil Wortman was driving a white station wagon, 1962, from Lesson Chevrolet that was borrowed. In that Chevrolet were, of course, us, and George had 4 kids in his. And as we were going down the highway, headed up to, of course, there wasn't interstates. We had partial interstates. We're going up the highway, and the car starts to buck, and we start, what the heck's wrong with it? So they popped the hood. And we popped the hood, and the battery had no water in it. As George says, it doesn't have any water. So to the right of us is a ditch. To the left of us is the other highway. And we see 1 or 2 cars passing. So George says, we need water. We don't have water. So he said, the next best thing is, who has to go to the restroom? So here were 4 or 5 kids kneeling on the toilet. I wanted to imagine those little bitty holes in the battery. I mean, it's everywhere. Put the thing back on, and he's trailing us. He doesn't know this is going on. When he gets to the next exit, the car is smoking. I mean, so we pull up into the gas station. We pop open the hood, and this thing blows up. And he calls me and says, what's wrong? But talking about direction, he got lost so many times, and on the same trip. So we get the battery fixed and all that. We're back on the road, and we're headed down the highway. And we say, you're on the wrong side of the interstate. Just got on the interstate. We say, you're on the wrong side of the interstate. We're all yelling at him. No, I'm not. We're doing 75 miles an hour. We look over to the right side of the interstate, right? And there are cars going that way, the same way we're going. And we're driving, and all of us is, Phil, you're on the wrong side of the interstate. So George pulls up all the way up in front, he's in that darn Cadillac, and he's waving like this. And there's a big hill coming up. So Phil, gently, at 55 miles an hour, goes right across the median, almost kills George. And right at the top of the hill comes 4 cars side by side.
True story. That's a pretty tough act to follow. So I flew out this morning, and while I was on the plane, I scribbled down some thoughts. So first of all, I'd just like to say good afternoon to everyone. And when I look out into the audience, I see a lot of folks that I do recognize and I know. And however, there might be a few people that might not know who I am. I'm Craig Swiver, and I was from the Lee Circle YMCA as well. So first of all, I want to thank Deke, Cliff, and Dennis for spearheading this effort to be able to make this thing happen and allow us all the opportunity to gather and honor the Hoffmans, the Frentzos, and the Wortmans. When I thought about what I might want to say, I realized that even though there's so many stories, I know all of us have a ton of stories, and those of you that know me know that I can talk a little bit long at times. So to try to avoid telling a bunch of stories and take maybe only a short bit of your time, I remember the first day that I walked into the YMCA. It was 1974. I was 14 years old. And really, I came to the Y for a change of pace and maybe to make some new friends. But what I found with the help and guidance and dedication and the love that I received from the legends and also their wives, specifically Miss Gail, Sugar, I was able to begin a journey and not change my pace in life, but change my entire life. It was really life-changing, what I was able to experience through the YMCA. What I'd like to do is read a little excerpt. I got this book, and I'm not sure who gave it to me, but I believe someone, might have been Colleen Canyon when I was working at the YMCA, and it's called The Sea in YMCA. And the funny thing is, about 2 or 3 months ago, I was going through my attic, and I found this box that had a bunch of Y stuff in it, and there was this book. I hadn't seen or read this book in maybe 20 or 30 years. So I thumbed through it while I was on the plane, and I found a little excerpt that I'd like to read. It's entitled A Prayer by Frank Sherman. It is my joy in life to find at every turning of the road the strong arm and comrade kind to help me onward with my load. And since I have no gold to give, and love alone must make make amends, my only prayer is, while I live, God, make me worthy of my friends. To Mr. Phil and Miss Gail, I can't thank you enough for providing me with such strong arms all the years that I was involved with you and the YMCA. And the many loads that you helped me along my road of life. I'm so blessed and thankful for the change of life that I got by walking into those doors in 1974. And I'm so lucky to be a part of your legacy and forever grateful for the love and support that you have given to myself and so many. I love you both. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patrick Goodman, and for those of you who know me, I literally grew up at the YMCA. It became my home. I walked away from a very bad environment and lived at the YMCA. It was very common to be there from 7 a.m. and close the doors on my way out. And I've had a lot of opportunity at the Y. I was able to take over the gymnastics team after Phil left. I had the greatest compliment I could probably give someone is I told Phil very recently that I considered him my father, not my own dad, because my own dad and I almost never saw each other. And I can't imagine complimenting somebody any more than that. You literally were my father. But I will tell a funny story. Now, how many people here know that Phil was also a black belt in judo? Okay. Yes, he was. And so he worked with the judo program at Lee Circle, just like he did the gymnastics program. Now, I told you this last night, so you're going to have to hear it again. One of my good friends was also a black belt and used me to practice throws, as basically just throwing a dummy, okay? So I got to learn how to fall a lot. But he also taught me how to counter throws, how to block, how to be defensive. That's not anything I do. I didn't know anything really about judo. I knew how to stop somebody from throwing me on the ground. My friend talked me into going to a judo tournament. On white belt, I don't know anything. So I showed up at the tournament, and I have a match, and I win a couple, I lose a couple. Then I go up against a kid named Kerry Kennedy, 15 and under national champion. So of course, Kerry takes one look at me, tries to throw me, and I counter it. And we both fall on the ground. I can't kick him. I try. I can't. Now, I'm sorry. I'm going to back up a little bit. Phil's the referee. And Rob Furman and Eddie Monster were the judges. And he tries to throw me again. I counter. I fall on the ground. Nothing happens. And again, the same result. And again, the same result. And finally, the match times out. And the two judges call it a draw. I just tied a black belt, and it's down to Phil to decide who wins. Oh man, it's my coach! I got this! Kerry. Why did you do that to him? Now he told me later why, but I was so mad at him. But he did the right thing, I didn't know what I was doing. But that story and 1,000 others for people like me who literally grew up at the YMCA. That was my home.
Well, I'll like others have said, I have 5,000 stories, so I'm just going to do a quick reflection on all three of our legends. First of all, George. I was Lee Circle. Many of you all were Metairie or West Bend. And we were all, our leaders clubs were all friendly, competitors, collaborators, etc. But when we came up here to Blue Ridge, we were one. We were New Orleans. And George, I will never forget that George treated all of us as if we were Metairie leaders, as if we were his very own children. And he had such a steady influence, and he was so very encouraging. He was a very important part of the experience here. Thank you to his family, as others have said, for lending him to us, because we know it involved many, many hours away from you, and a lot of dedication and sweat and commitment. From Boots, I learned something very valuable. Of course, Boots was, as we know, so jovial and always quick with a joke and very, very quick-witted. But a serious thing I learned from Boots was actually when he was fundraising for the Y, and he also did it for Volunteers in America. And he was talking to me once about his technique, and he said, Amy, I never ask for money. I never ask for money. I ask for friendship. And once you become my friend and you fall in love with the mission that I represent, I got your money. You'll give it to me. You'll be glad, and you'll be a part of something bigger. And that made a lasting impression on me, and it's, I guess, part of, style that I got to incorporate into my professional life as well. Phil, again, so many stories. But what I'd like to say to Phil is something I actually said to him privately today, was that he had such an ability to look at you and know what your gift was and be able to draw it out of you. Anybody that knows me knows I was the anti-athlete. I mean, he probably took one look at me and said, no gymnastics for you. But I was able to teach arts and crafts and, help with summer camps and so forth. And when the camps were over, I still wanted to be around all these cool kids, even though I, had no athletic bone in my body. So I would come and I'd sit on the bleachers and just be there, just watching. And Phil noticed me and came up to me and asked me if I wanted to learn how to judge gymnastics. And so I got to learn the inner workings of it. I got to travel with the team and help them with their performances. And as I like to say, this nerdy, kind of friendless bookworm became one of the cool kids. And obviously picked up something else along the way. The Y that I've been hanging out with for 43 years now. But as Craig said, it wasn't just a fun place to be or, a good time in my life that I look back fondly on. It was my life. It was life altering. The lessons from all three of our legends and their wives. Miss Gail was always our partner in crime, always the fun mom. Have the good parts of me, whatever they are, I owe to Mr. Phil, Miss Gail, and to the other legends. And can't thank you enough. It's an honor to be here with you.
My name's Pete. I got involved with Y on the West Bank at a very young age. Well, I was born at a very young age, but that's my mom was living in the hospital and was going to have surgery at the time. It was a dangerous surgery for a lady. And she decided that I should get involved with the YMCA and not grow up on the streets. What she had, now we know, is a hysterectomy. To explain it to me, was she was having her puppy maker taken out. So she dragged me down and got me involved with Boots. And I don't know how Deke and I were best friends growing up all the time. The Du Boises and the W's were always in trouble. But Boots, if there were 5 men that I could count and put on one hand about people who have influenced my life, who have given me tools and training and lessons, Boots would be on that hand. He gave very formative years, gave such great lessons, encouragement. He gave us leeway to do just about everything. And he was never a difficult person. He never really spanked you for getting into trouble. He would let you learn from your lessons. So for that, I'm thankful for the Y. I could tell you stories about Deke and I, more of the trouble that we got into. We won't talk about stealing cars or well, at one point, Boots gave Deke and I the concessions for the West Bank YMCA to have a little concession stand by the pool, but also gave us concessions to do the day camps. And we would provide snacks and Coca-Colas and things. I'm a very shy, Deke is the guy who got me in trouble all the time. And he taught us, we would buy food from the bakery, the day-old bread, so that's what we would serve the kids. And he figured out a way that we could get a cup and fill it up with ice, and that soft ice, and you just packed it in just a cup, and then you just pour a couple ounces of Coca-Cola on it, and we sell it for $0.25, and we make an absolute fortune. He still owes me for that. But that's just the kind of thing that Boots would encourage us to get into. And we got into trouble at the camps on the weekend trips and the week trips. Up here, I think we're more on our behavior. So I give, and Phil on the East Bank, we were scared of him. If we had to go over there, we knew we got in trouble. If we got in trouble, we got to go to see Phil. So thank you thank you.
Now, I really want to speak to George, which I will momentarily if I can keep my composure, but I will say, we were scared of Phil. We knew there had to be something good about him because he had this Gail. But the funny story about Phil is we are here on the last day of Blue Ridge. It's either the Friday or the Saturday. We come up on a bus. We're at this point at 3 buses full of people. Thank you to you and to Boots and George. So Mr. Phil says that we can go up the mountain, but we have to be back at a certain time. We're late. We're late by like 45 minutes or maybe an hour. And so we get down, and he is standing at the end of the thing. He put us on the bus. We were scared to death of what was going to happen, and we were punished. We had to stay on the bus while he stopped at Cherokee, and we were stuck on the bus. And George came in, and he said to all of us, "Look, it's going to be okay. We're going to make sure Mr. Phil had to get out and get some food or something." Anyway, we were scared to death of Mr. Phil, but we appreciate it so much that you brought us George. And onto a lucky talk. George taught us so many things. Legend hardly begins to describe what he brought to us. He loved his family beyond measure. He talked about Christophe and Andreas so much. He brought them to the Y. We watched him with them, and we knew what kind of parent we wanted to be. And just like Peter said, we watched him with Marlea, and we knew what kind of spouse we wanted to be. My favorite George stories, we used to sit in the gym at the Metairie Y, and there was a corner like that, and we would all sit on top of each other. And George would stand in his, stretch pants and tank top with his big muscles showing. And he was so sincerely in love with every single one of us, and he knew every one of us for who we were, and he loved us for who we were, and he made us all better. And he had a challenge for us, so he put us all in the corner, and he said, "And here's what we're going to do, everybody." And it was some stretch goal. And he said, he watched us all react, and it was something that there was no way we were ever going to be able to do. And he said, "I believe in every one of you, and every one of you can do this. I know you can do it, and you know you can do it." And so we went and did it. And so George believed in us, so we believed in ourselves. And I can tell you, without question, I can speak from, sure, Linda, Ricky, Joey, Kenny, Cliff, everybody from our Y, and I'd say that George made us who we are today. Things that we do today are because of what he taught us. And all of the Frentzos people, you will never, ever, ever know what he means to us. Thank you.
I'm not a Blue Ridge kid, but I was Phil Wortman's secretary for 5 years in the YMCA. And Pat and Amy and Craig and Dennis and Little Phil, as we used to call him, and Sharon and Laurie over here, and God, they were all the kids that were at the YMCA. Jared worked at the YMCA, Eddie Munster. So I knew all of these people at different times. And when y'all say that Phil was scary, that is so amazing to me, because he is the best boss in the world. I have never had another boss like him. He treated me just unbelievably. I remember he used to have me, I would type all this stuff that he would dictate, and he would come out to me and he'd say, "Catherine, I think we made a mistake." And I did. "We made a mistake? I'm the one who typed that paper up. How could we made a mistake?" But he never jumped on me. You know what I'm saying? That's so unusual for a boss, that we made a mistake. And I can tell you another thing real quickly. Every one of these kids had an open door to come into that office. That's how I knew all the kids, because they always came into the office. They were always there to see Mr. Phil. Miss Gail was always there doing her exercise classes. Me watching things at the weight room behind my office window and hearing those weights drop when somebody was out there. It was just, I can't even tell you. And I've had other jobs, never had another boss, never had another influence in my life. And of course, wouldn't have met my husband if he had not come to the YMCA to see his old gymnastics coach and forever friend. So thank you, Phil.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Tarver, and I'm actually not from New Orleans. So I represent the outreach of these three families beyond just New Orleans. And I was a Leaders Club kid that came here to Leaders School from Jacksonville, Florida. And I met all three of these, and I can say families now, not just the individuals, because I met Marlea just last night. And so I'm grateful for that. I did meet George a couple of times. I was fairly close to Boots and Erna Hoffman. But of course, Phil, and most of my career was built on the health and well-being side of the YMCA. So obviously Phil, that was a big part of Phil. And I want to also point out that Phil affected the YMCA movement much more in addition to his work with Leaders Club. And he's been a mentor of mine for 55 years. And I'm very grateful for that. But my story is about red enamel spray paint. So anyway, yes, and I got my knees spray painted, and I didn't keep them straight on the trampoline or something one year. And so I spent, I got it in the middle of leader school, so I got to wear that paint, with some pride, I suppose, for the rest of the week, and then finally wore off about a month later after I got back to Jacksonville. But in any case, so fast forward that to Phil's retirement event. So I had decided I was going to go in and I was going to have a can of red spray paint, which I did have, and I was going to have him pull his cuff up above his knee, but I was going to have a piece of cardboard and I was going to spray it next to his knee. But as I approached that and it became evident what I was doing, Gail started saying, "Do it! Do it!" And I didn't know at the time, a lot of recently, a lot of our states have eliminated statutes of limitations for child abuse claims. So if you get a certified letter, but in any case, so I got to return the favor in real time, in a real way. And but I will tell you, speaking from the broader Y movement, and the Y is all I've ever done in my entire career. And much of it goes to the impact of these three family legends here, for which I am grateful that that God put them in my life, along with many of you in the room. Because truly, when I came here, I was not a big athlete or anything like that. It was a time where this school was built around very high-level athletics. And yet, I was able to find a spot, thanks to Phil and people like that. And so I've had a career that's been more than anything I could have ever asked for. And I'm just grateful. And I'm grateful that God put them in my life, as well as many of you in this room. So thank you again.
Looking at Steve Tarver, since I did not grow up in New Orleans, nor was I a part of Metairie West Bank or Lee Circle. But Amy made it quite clear when she was speaking, when you guys who were members of those organizations stepped on this campus, you were a force and you acted together. I know I've visited Metairie and West Bank and also Lee Circle several times. And particularly at Lee Circle, those of you who were there, always made me feel welcome. I still have a fairly lengthy quote that was provided, which all of you signed on a visit when I was down there, probably in the mid-70s to late 70s. I was privileged to be a part of the famed Mafia, along with Steve Yankovic, Don Pfefferly, Bob Kilderson, and Ronnie Gonzalez. And through these three, we had an opportunity to with their guidance, do a lot of good, I think, at their instruction for Blue Ridge Leader School. As we were together last night, and the Lee Circle group were gathering for pictures, I started to walk away, and Gabby grabbed me by the shoulder. She said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, it's time for Lee Circle to do the picture." She said, "You're as much of a part of us as anybody in the group. You're going to be in this picture." So you all had mentors that told you and showed you how to love one another. They set a path before you, you followed it. And we, as outsiders like Steve and myself, benefited by your actions, which your actions always speak louder than your words, as we know. Very quickly, George Frentzos, I can remember we had an international week at Blue Ridge Leader School 1 year. So everybody, I heard my Jewish friends quote the Shema, pray the Shema. And I remember George getting up to do the blessing, and he did it in Greek. Most beautiful prayer. I didn't know what he was saying, but I'm Greek. Yeah, it was Greek to me. Right. But knowing his heart and how he emulated, and the man that he was, just impacted me. And that's something I remember about George to this day. Boots and Erna, great folks. I remember Erna and I had a number of conversations, almost definitely all our after hours. And it's already been alluded to, Deke particularly, on his way to the hospital bleeding to death. Boots is typical Boots in the back seat telling jokes. You could have your worst day, and Boots Hoffman could make you laugh. I can remember to this day the story about Dave Demetrius, I think I pronounced his name correct, who drove the bus, was involved, and he's taking a busload of kids because they were going to New Orleans International to do something. I don't know if it was to, tour the facility, meet the pilots, I don't remember. So Dave had them drive the bus to one side of the airport. And he gets out, goes in, and says, we're going to see so-and-so. Well, he's on the other side of the airport. So they said, okay, thank you. We'll go to the other side of the airport. Well, apparently the gate was open. The YMCA bus pulled through the gate, and they go across the runway. And all the kids had their arms out the window. Boots off. Last, I guess, well, not least, for these legends, even though Tom Thrillkill, I had a lot to do with my life as well. So did Phil and Gail. Yes, Steve, I got my 45 gallons of red paint too, all in 1 week. But I never, ever thought of Phil and Gail other than the most wonderful people I've ever met. Their hospitality, their openness. Phil and I have had so many policy discussions as well as political discussions and other discussions throughout our lives. And I don't have time to tell another story because I know there will be other people that want to speak. But for you, Phil and Gail, let me read something from John Wesley, which I think typifies you all and your impact here. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you forever can. That's for you, because you all have emulated that to everybody in this room and continue to do that today. Love you both.
Hi, I'm Sharon Lane, and it is such a privilege to be here and to be able to honor all of the great legends. I grew up in the Lee Circle YMCA, and Pat and Amy and Gabby and Lori and so many others. And my story is very similar in that I think all of us were looking for a home, and the Lee Circle YMCA was our home. And we were looking for family, and in our case, Phil and Gail were our family. It didn't take them long to adopt you. I think in my case it was only a couple of weeks before they spotted me and said, yep, she's one of ours. We have to add one more to the family. And once you are part of their family, you are part of their family for life. And it is a wonderful thing and a privilege. They created just an opportunity for all of us to be included in their family and to be in their home and to know their children and then their grandchildren and then their great-grandchildren and make them all a part of our family. And as we grew up, our children and grandchildren became part of that big family as well. In our case, with the Circle YMCA, Metairie YMCA, West Bank YMCA, all of those people became our family as well. And quick story, when Jerry and I were getting married, we were getting married at our home and planned a small wedding. Phil and Gail, of course, were going to be there. And as word got out, we started having people calling, all YMCA people saying, "We heard you're getting married. We're coming." We ended up with about 100 people and had a great time. And they were our family then. And it's remarkable. I think everyone would say the same thing, that we're all family now. We have always known, even though we've been away from New Orleans for so long, that we could call anyone in that family and they would be there, and 100 people would be there. And that is, I think, a tribute to all of the legends, and in my case, the legends that I grew up with were Phil and Gail. And I've been thinking a little bit about Gail recently. And you know, Gail kind of snuck up on us, I think. She was always there, always doing so much, always loving us. But she did it so effortlessly that I don't know that we appreciated it as much as we should have when we were young. But as we got older, we realized how much she did for us and how much she loved us and how much our experience had to do with Gail and Phil and Daddy, as well as Phil. If you want to see what love looks like in action, it's Gail. And if we are all still close, Gail has a lot to do with that. The texts that we get from her are priceless. The emojis, the Bitmoji that we made in the keys when we camped with you guys. Yes. Yeah. With all the hearts and hugs and love. She does an awful lot to keep our family together. But I also realized something as we were driving yesterday. She was also, and we didn't realize this, a big part of the mischief that occurred. Because very often when we were short-sheeting dads, it was Gail who was whispering in our ear. Yeah. So I just wanted to add my love and my thank you to Phil, who has meant so much to me, to Jerry, to our family, to Gail, who has meant so much to us and done so much for us. And Phil, thank you so much for everything that you've done and for allowing them to include us in your family. So thank you guys. Love you.
Thank you. This is Bob from Blue Ridge. This is from me. I went to New Orleans in 1977. I was a graduate of Wilbury Walker, which I didn't really know that I was. Yes, I know. That my life had completely come full circle. My first lifeguard position, you certified me. I worked in the Algiers Navy-based pool for the Y. It was my first job. But looking back, you know, I worked in Tampa. I worked with Eddie. We were very, very close during that time, and being able to come on staff for Blue Ridge Leader School in 1990 then put me in a whole new circle with you, Dee, with you, Karen and Peter, with Boots and Erna, with you, Phil and Gail. George and Marlea, I didn't get a chance to meet, but the wonderful thing about my job is that now I do know you. And we'll continue to be good friends, and being able to do this event has been so meaningful for me because I'm able to honor you, Phil and Gail, and your family. How wonderful is that? I'm able to honor Boots and Erna, and these are people that I've known now for 30 years. Dennis and Sue, you've taken me in so many times. So I just wanted to say the world is really a wonderful place, and sometimes you never know how the connect will be, or how it'll work out. But now being here and having the opportunity to do this, it's been, who would have known, right? That I would be able to do that, or be able to have the friends. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much for allowing me to do this and having today. because it is so very special. And I just wanted to say thank you.
I wanted to give one last message that reflects Boots primarily, but also touches to Phil, but it in fact is relevant to all of us in the room. And this was sparked by a discussion Phil had with my wife and I 15 years ago in the presence of Boots, who was trying to egg him on. And nothing new, right? And it was simply that we were the most selfish people on the mountain. So let that resonate for just a second. Because if in fact these are your legends, then you mirror them. And when you mirror them, you mirror their selfishness. And the selfishness being that they got more out of pouring into you than you received. And it's that level of selfishness that we should all continue to mirror, but just not mirror, but to celebrate. Because these legends, you taught us. You taught us that. You modeled it every day. You didn't just talk it, you showed us. George showed us. Boots showed us. Phil and Gail continue to show us. So revel in your selfishness. Thank you.